Hi, welcome to another show of Flip Your Switch. Today's show is about zero gun violence, something we need in the city of Toronto. And there's a guy who runs that organization named Louie March. Will be sitting here today precisely talking about what needs to be done to alleviate our problem with zero gun violence and the angst that are going on in the city right now with all the shootings. Stay tuned, pay attention. This is going to be an interesting show. Louie, it's a pleasure to have you on our show.
Thank you very much for having me.
It's Black History Month.
Yes.
And you're the guy we just wanted to talk to. Like, I remember you coming into Joyceville around 1970, 1978.
Yeah.
Joyceville's a medium security institution in the Kingston area of 9 prisons. What were you there for? What kind of work were you doing?
Yeah.
And what did you do before that?
Yeah, you know, like it's going back some years, but it's an important part of my life because I was a student at George Brown College doing business management, and I was part of the student council, and we had an event, and we wanted some community people there, so we invited Dudley Laws, right, to come and talk about the work that he was doing in the community.
What was the event?
It was a community engagement youth leadership event.
But in the institution, was it for BIFA?
No, it was not for BIFA.
Oh, okay.
I didn't even know about BIFA at the time, right?
BIFA's Black Inmates Friends Association.
Yes.
Yeah.
So when Dudley came, I said, I'm going to start working with him, right? And that's when BIFA came about, right? So I'm finishing off my degree, it was a diploma in business management at George Brown, but we had built a relationship with Dudley Laws. And at that time, the reason we were working with him was police brutality.
And Dudley Law was an advocate for the Black community and dealing with the angst against the police at that time.
Exactly. That's why. So we took an interest in it because every weekend another Black youth was being shot by the police. Violence against the young men was just out of control. And they always had an excuse as to why they had to use this force, right? So we started working with him. He belonged to an organization called the UNIA, Universal Negro Improvement Association. And we were the youth wing to it. We were called at that time BICAP, Black Youth Community Action Project. So there was a group of young Black people that were working with him, with this organization, and we were doing community work with young people, how to get them positively engaged in meaningful activity, and how to address the issue of police brutality.
And was this Unite? Is that Marcus Garvey?
Yes, exactly. So we were the youth wing for that organization. But in doing that, we started doing work in the community with young people. And out of that came the work with BIFA, right? Black Inmates and Friends Assembly. So we started visiting some of the jails.
The federal prisons.
Yes, right? So he would call us up on the weekend and say, look, we're going to Joyceville. We're going to go work with the inmates. We're going to talk about Black history. We're going to talk about leadership, job opportunities, and just connecting with the inmates. That's what we were doing, right? So we'd go in there, we'd play dominoes. They actually take food with us, right? And we got a chance to sit down with the inmates and just talk one-to-one or to a group, right? You know?
So that experience, because I started BIFA, and I started BIFA specifically for that experience to happen. And
it was unfolding the way you designed it.
And the first BIFA meeting was like that meeting you talked about.
Yeah.
Guys sitting down, playing dominoes, music, eating soul food, and just kicking it with the community. And that was big medicine for us at the time. But from an outside guy coming in, how was that medicine for you?
You know what? It was a shock at the beginning. The reason was because we saw so many of our own people in there. And there was no discussion about elevating themselves and transitioning back into society when they left. It seemed as though everybody wrote them off. But when you were talking to them, they were just like real human beings with real human being stories, right? But they couldn't talk that talk, right? So connecting with them gave them an outlet, right? And a connection.
And admittedly, in those days, there was hardly no resources for the uplifting of Black inmates at all.
And that's why our work was so important. It was critically important because for the first time, it wasn't a church group coming in there trying to convert them. It was a cultural, right? It was a concerned group coming in and engaging them in a discussion and activities that made them feel human again. That was the important thing, right? And so for us, once we got used to the way things operated there, we could come there and add value, right? Hope, aspirations, right? And also, you know, it was realizing how those people got in there and what can we do outside to prevent these things from happening, right? So our work started off with a police brutality, but it morphed into other things. It was about giving young people a chance to be human, not only while they were in there, but also give them hope when they came out, and connections and activities and ways to link back when they come out.
So that was in the 70s. Now you're involved in advocacy work. You're with Dudley Laws and his United movement. Things are happening for you. Transition through the 80s and 90s, because that was a turbulent era in Toronto at the time.
So I focused on my education and my other career as a corporate manager in the financial services field. So I used to do that full time and work with Dudley on a part-time basis, right? Whenever time allowed, right? Then I took a trip to Africa to do some volunteer work there, came back, and yeah, the 80s were terrible. They were terrible. We were doing the marches, we were doing the advocacy work, right?
Then you had a plague that came into the black community called crack at that same time.
There was so much things. So then we called and we had a provincial youth conference. And we says, can I swear on this program? You said, what the fuck's going on?
You can dance naked on the table if you want.
So we said, what's going on, right? Why are we always being brutalized, right? Why is drugs becoming so dominant? And then when you speak to the young people, it's because they had no hope. No one gave them the time of day, right? So drugs, gangs became normalized in a lot of these communities.
Yeah, and there was no money infused in policing to do it from a social aspect, coming into the community, fitting into the community. They started to materialize themselves, get tanks, get bigger weapons, and then they stayed on the fringe of the community. Has that changed?
Well, what happened was, it's like you're baking a cake, and you have certain ingredients, and you change them depending on what the outcome's supposed to be, right? There's certain things that were consistent: racism and discrimination, lack of opportunity, lack of access. Our kids were going through all that all the time, right? So for their way out, sometimes drugs and gangs became an option for them, right? So fast forward now, right? This hasn't changed. It's just coming in a different way. Right?
I'm thinking of my Black Panther training from the back of the days. Killer Pusher Save a Kid was a program that they had there. Killer Pusher Save a Kid. And the reason they had that, because it's been in a couple of Black Panther movies, that the FBI were caught giving heroin to some Black Panther guys to poison the neighborhood. So it was like open seasons on pushers at the time.
Look, we always question, how the heck was all these drugs coming in, right? How the heck were the guns coming in, right? Because we weren't bringing them in. Somebody was providing the opportunity to access these type of things. And then it became like a viable choice, a viable option, where other people didn't see it that way. So you mix that with police brutality, excessive policing in our communities, what do you think is going to happen?
Well, here in the Alexander Park community, or at least the downtown West End core of the city at the time, we'll call it, prior to even this made, that combination of events were already happening. You had a lot of social unrest. You had a lot of Americans hiding up here, escaping the draft, and you had a lot of weapons infused in the community, primarily from the undercover agents working for the police at the time, creating that social unrest. We know that that happens. And
but we have a history. If you look back at the history of even Marcus Garvey's organization, Universal Negro Improvement, it was people from outside that were planted inside to disrupt the activities of these. Even though they were trying to service community.
Do you understand?
We saw that there. We saw it at the Black Panther Park. So it was not a surprise to us, right? But they were getting better at hiding it, right? We have Rosie Douglas. Like we had them
Well, the
here.
undercover agent assigned to bring down Rosie Douglas, Warren Hart, a NASA agent from the United States who set up the Baltimore Black Panther Party, was the guy that I was arrested with, and I was his right-armed man at the time. So he had set us, a bunch of kids from here, set us up.
No, who's playing who? They've been playing our kids. They've been playing our community. They've been playing our people for so long, and they get away with it. So you said social unrest? That was an understatement. There was an explosion about to happen.
Revolution in the air.
It had to be. It had to be. Because how long can you tolerate and take this, right? So then the guns started coming. So my focus now, we had this big shooting at the Eaton Center, Saturday afternoon in the food court. 2 people shot, killed. A white boy got shot in his head. We had a shooting at Danzig in a community barbecue.
And on that same day at the Eaton Center shooting, there was a shooting here at Alexander Park, because I came here that day and there was a shooting here.
So all these shootings are taking place. So as a youth worker, concerned about community, right, over these years with Dudley, right, I called a community meeting. And I says, what the fuck's going on? We used to deal with police brutality. Why are we pointing the guns on each other? Right? And out of that meeting, because I'm a manager, I'm a corporate manager. So I have management theories and practice, and one of them is called MBO, Management by Objectives. You clearly state your objective to the staff. You get them to buy into it, right? Then you provide them the resources to achieve it, right? So I said, what's our objective here? So I went and said, 0 gun violence. And people looked at me and started chuckling and laughing and saying, fuck, you can't have 0 gun violence in this city. I says, fuck you, right? We already have it, but we only have it in certain communities for certain people.
That's right. Yeah.
Right? So I says, if they can have 0 gun violence in Rosedale, why can't we have 0 gun violence in Rexdale? It's not that we don't have the template. We don't have the profile. We don't know what it takes. So I'm saying to myself, no, we want 0 gun violence, not for some, but for all. So it started off, right, as a 90-day summer campaign, right? We were going to go into the communities, work with the organizations, the young people, and try and give them alternatives besides picking up guns and selling drugs, right? But as we started delving more into it, Ricky, I'm telling you, it's like we pulled the top, right, of this major problem that was brewing, right? And it was about to explode, seriously. So it wasn't no longer a 90-day campaign. We said, we're going to keep driving this, because we realized that the violence in the community was imported into these communities, right? By outsiders taking advantage of these youth, right? And who was paying the price? Who was going to the funerals? Who was going to the hospitals? Who was traumatized, right? So it became bigger than a 90-day summer campaign. So people bought into 0 gun violence as a concept, and we moved it from a 90-day summer campaign, and it's still going 6 years later, right? We can't say no to this. We can't stop it, because if we stop it at this particular time, the politicians and the police are going to have a blank check to do whatever they want. We are a voice. We have a network now of over 40 different organizations, agencies, programs across the city, right? People say, you know, where's your head office? We don't have a fucking head office. We work on the street. If you're going to meet us, you're going to meet us at Tim Hortons, or you're going to meet us in a school or in a community center. That's where you're going to meet us, right? So whether it's in Rexdale, or whether it's in Malvern, or whether it's in Alexander Park, that's where you're going to meet us, right? But we have that network of organizations in these communities. But we also have a network of people, volunteers, that believe in this concept.
That's right.
For 0 gun violence.
And that's the key.
So we have people, right? And so if something happens in Regent and they want us to come in and work with the parents or work with the youth in early intervention activity, or if they want us to come into Alexander Park and talk about what we're doing and stuff, and why is it important for these kids to not just respond to these temptations, but give them other choices. This is what we do. So we have 3 basic things that we do, right? The first one is education and awareness about gun violence. We don't trust the politicians, we don't trust the police, and we don't trust the media. the politicians have a limited amount of truths that they can tell you, because everything that they say out of their mouth is about political gain, right? Self-serving interest. The police can't tell you the full truth. Oh, we've got an investigation going on, right? Oh, we can't tell you this, but we can tell you little snippets, right? And then the media, they're covering the violence in the city, but they've only got a 2-minute slot for gun violence. What the fuck can you talk about gun violence in 2 minutes, right? So education and awareness. So we delve deeper. We're gonna put the full truth out there, right? And hopefully when the people know the full truth, we will respond differently.
So you have 40 connected entities that you deal with through this organization.
And also people.
We're talking about, we're in a camera era. We have guys here from this area manning the cameras. Do you think that if more people took an interest, that's like Jojo Chino used to, and point that camera at what he thought was the social angst at the time, would that have a greater benefit?
It will, because education and awareness means changing the narrative. Who's behind the camera? Who's telling the story? Who's feeding the information, right? If we are looking at the oppressors to do this, they're going to have a spin on everything they do. We need people behind the camera that can insert a narrative, tell a story that is seldom told.
Also, by setting up such an entity, it gives the kids in the neighborhood something to look forward to, gets them off the street, and gets them headed towards a certain type of education. This type of education, videography, editing, sound technician, all that's available to them.
Don't trust the oppressive system to tell your story. Their story and my story will never be the same. Will never be the same. Because their self-serving interest and my interest, right? They will go on and say about gun violence, I belong to the old school. I believe in putting more police on the ground. Let's just lock them up and throw away the key, right? They broke the rules, they broke the laws and stuff, right? But you don't batter bruise people, right? With oppression, racism, lack of education, lack of employment opportunities, and expect them to walk around the city with a smile on their face.
Unless, if you're looking at it from that point of view, you have enough money to carry on that madness over decades and decades of time.
Exactly.
And reap the negative benefits of that. And that always becomes the argument. How much money are you going to spend on social enterprises, social programs, a program like you're doing, programs like this, versus that police technology that you're getting,
Last week, our mayor had a meeting with the police chiefs and some mayors from across the city. No community people invited, just these people. But one of the mayors, when they were having their press conference after, he used the equation 1 to 6. You know what that means? It means for every $1 we can invest up front in early intervention and prevention programming, we save $6 on the back end.
That's right.
In terms of policing, incarceration, right? Medicaid, all these things.
So it costs $120,000 to keep a guy in federal prison, but it only costs $30,000 to keep him in a halfway house. And
well, not only that, you know how much we spend on education per person, right? According to the Ontario government, our average for education that we spend on the citizens of Ontario is something like $12,000, $13,000, $14,000, $15,000. Like if you go up north, it might cost more, right? But we are willing to spend $120,000 to incarcerate somebody, right? But the education, we're going to limit that, right, to only $15,000 a year? Something's wrong with that. The numbers do not support this priority and this concern that they have. They would rather lock us up and throw away the key than give us opportunity up front. For every $1 you invest up front, you save $6 in policing.
So what I would say to you is not everybody wants to lock everybody up. So how do you find those people that are on your side? Have you found enough of them yet that you feel comfortable that there's some hope for your tomorrow?
Remember what I just said? We don't trust the police and we don't trust politicians, right? However, there are people in there that want to make a difference.
Exactly, always.
However, a policeman goes to school, he goes to police college, and he comes out bushy-tailed, starry-eyed. He wants to make a difference, right? I want to reach out to these kids, I want to make a difference. But once he puts on that police uniform and he puts a gun on his hip, right, and he goes into the police culture, it's just a matter of time before he flips, right? It's just like the teachers. They go to teachers' college and they're going to make a difference. They're really going to, teach and be.
Well,
but once they get into that culture,
I understand.
the culture consumes them.
Because corrections works that day. You see guards coming in that they're social scientists when they come in, and they turn the police within 2 weeks of being there.
Yes.
And their attitude changes from a social scientist who really wants to help and change
so
things
they're good intention,
to someone who's just
but the culture is the culture is big enough
Yeah.
to consume them and change them, right? So that's the police. The politicians, yes, we have allies in the political arena that really want to come out and help and make a difference. Your guy from this neighborhood, Adam Vaughn, Joe Cressy. I've been at the table many times with them, talking about this issue of gun violence and stuff, right? But sometimes when they go behind closed doors with their political buddies, something else comes out of their mouth, right? That is not consistent with what they've said on the streets. So we have to be mindful of that, right? Back to the police. Look, we have legislative law that gives them the discretion to use force as they choose. Discretionary. That's why we give them a gun. We train them how to intimidate. We train them how to impose their will on people, right? That's what we do, right? We give them a gun. We teach them how to walk so they can be an intimidating walk. You ever see police walk? There's a police walk.
I've been studying the police my whole life.
Okay, see what there's a tone of voice.
Exactly.
Right? So that's what we train them to do.
There's an attitude, and the attitude fluctuates depending on where they're at.
So then we're going to go ask these people now to become community angels, to go into a basketball game with the youth in the community and be on police.
That's possible, though, because they come in the corrections. They come in to play ball in some of the joints sometimes, and they sometimes play with the kids here. So what I'm saying is...
It's a special type of training, and it's about consistency.
We'll say 10 cops sign up to do that. Really, one is serious about it, the one guy that brought it up. The other 9 are just playing the games, and you see that they go away really soon after that, right?
So when we talk about gun violence, we're not going to give you the political version. We're not going to give you the police version, right? We're not going to give you the media's version. So that's why this opportunity here is important, because we can insert some content in here that the public... First time we wouldn't even talk to the media. They'd phone and say, can you come and do an interview on breakfast television for 2 minutes about gun violence, but you have to be at the studio at 6:30 in the morning. I said, fuck you, right? You gotta be joking, right? What am I gonna do to change the course of history about gun violence in 2 minutes? How the hell am I gonna get to your place at 6:30? You won't even send a taxi for me, right? So we said, hell no, right? We didn't trust them to tell the story. But you know what? If you talk about education and awareness, we said, look, let's learn how to use those 2 minutes. Because if we don't insert our content and our narratives, the political narrative and the police narrative...
That's right, it's an opportunity for a soundbite.
So we have to get better at utilizing those sound bites. So when they ask me now to do these interviews, I says, okay, yeah, but you better ask the right questions. Because if you ask me any dumbass questions, right, I'm going to answer what I'm going to say anyway. It's going to make you look stupid. So let's prep these questions before, and don't surprise me with no dumbass questions about gun violence, right? So now they've been more receptive to my aggressive tone and the fact that I challenged them, right, to tell the real story. And don't use snippets to repeat what John Tory just said. When I speak, it's going to be counter to what John Tory just said. Nobody's born with a gun in their hand. Nobody's born saying I'm going to be a drug dealer. Nobody's born saying I'm going to be a gang person. There's a socialization, there's an environment that's created where that happens, right? So what are we doing to address that, right? For every $1 you invest upfront, you save $6 on the back end. They're willing to pay $6, right? So education and awareness using media has become part of our thing. Another thing that we do is advocacy, right? Advocacy, advocating against the government and saying your funding, your programs, your policies don't make any sense, right? And we can say that to them.
So you're demanding accountability.
Yes.
Exactly. And
yes. So we've been to Ottawa 3 times. We've been to the Senate committee to talk about how to deal with gun violence, right? But when we go there, we go on our terms, not on their terms. We've done presentations to provincial government and to municipal government, advocating, right? For example, one thing that we hate is what we call the funding Olympics. The funding Olympics is simple. You're going to come up with some grants, some funding to deal with gun violence. We know in advance, you know in advance, who's going to get the gold, silver, and bronze. The people that you know, the organizations you're comfortable with, but then the leftover money, they leave organizations like Flippers to fight amongst others to get it. So you have to fight amongst everybody else to get access to that funding. So in order to get that funding, you have to undermine, you have to fight for clients. So you guys can't focus on the work that you need to do because the little bit of money that they're going to give you is not going to be able to have the impact that you are. So the funding Olympics is we know who's going to get the gold chunk of it. We know who's going to get the silver. We know, and you know that in advance, right? So you're left fighting with other community groups for the leftover money, right? So advocacy is how do we get them to change that, right? And then the last part that we do, so it's education and awareness, it's advocacy, right? And because we don't take their money, we can challenge them and we can hold them accountable. All the other organizations that gets government funding have to be very careful about what they say.
They have to play the government game where you get cut off. That, everybody knows that, so yeah.
So advocacy is important for us, right?
Have you seen any changes in the last couple of years? We'll say just 2 years to 3 years because the violence has exploded in the last few years. Have you seen any changes in the government's attitude in attempting to use those resources to help you or people like you in the communities that you're going to? Have they started yet to wake up and listen to your message is what I'm getting at.
Look, the only time that the government wakes up is when the violence spills over into their zones. In 2005, we had 52 homicides due to gun violence. 52. Number 52 was a white girl named Jane Krieber, young and Dundas, Foot Locker, doing her Boxing Day
Innocent
shopping.
bystander, yeah.
Everybody knows about Jane Krieber. Does anybody know about the other 51? No. Oh, well, right? So they're selective in when they come out. Like last weekend, we had 3 guys shot. Guess where?
In this, yeah, this area, so yeah.
Right? With all those condominiums and all those rich people, right? You know? See how quick they came up with $6 million, right? Can I say that it's directly linked? But I would be stupid not to think it's linked, right? The only time that they wake up, right, is when it spills over into their communities and they have to do something about it.
But
so that's one thing, right, that we've seen the way they've responded, right? However, I have to give credit where credit is due. The federal government has come out with, I think, what, 328 million, but they're dealing with the border control, the RCMP, right, technology at the border to stop the guns from coming in, right, you know? But the more money they spend, we see gun violence increasing. So something's wrong, right? They're spending more money.
So their preventive measures ineffective. I'm going to say this to you.
Exactly.
I used to sell guns when I was a kid. I used to sell them in this neighborhood. We used to come back and forth across the border with them all the time. We used
so
to
how could you do that? How could you come across the border with guns when they were illegal?
Because we knew how to play the game and find the loopholes, and that's what criminals do. They know how to play the game, find the loopholes, so the laws you put in effect generally become ineffective. We were liberating guns from all over the place. So here's
run that one by me. You were liberating the guns.
Yeah, and the whole thing is if we really wanted one, we just take it off a cop.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. If you really wanted one, so that to deal with us from that end is not to deal with the gun situation, but why we need one in the first place. And that's why did I need the gun in the first place, and why did I need a whole truckload of guns in the first place? So if you would have dealt with that issue within me, you'd have saved yourself the money you're talking about.
But they're dealing with the fact that you got the guns. Look, gun violence, let's look at it this way. Let's talk economics. Let's talk supply and demand. If there's a demand for something, there will be a supply, right? Because there's money to be made. If there's a demand for violence, there's a demand for guns. And if there's a demand for guns, guess what? The supply of guns will materialize.
Exactly.
Right? Deal with why does somebody have to become, because nobody's born violent, right? But the environment that you live and how you move, right, forces you to do this to survive.
When you're in prison, and this is the majority of people,
Yeah.
they look for a weapon of some kind just to have something more than they had in their hands and fists. If you're a trained
It's
fighter
protection.
or karate. So that prison mentality has now grown to include this neighborhood.
But people carry guns. It's not that they wake up in the morning and say, I'm going to shoot somebody. But if they carry a gun, we've seen fights on the street that normally used to be a fist fight. And it's done and gone. Someone is going to go and get some Band-Aids or they're going to go get some stitches. Now when those fights happen, someone's going to get buried. And somebody's going to be grieving.
Why?
Right? Because the guns are there, the conditions have not changed, but the politicians talk a good game, right? So that has not changed. So it's education, advocacy, and the last piece of what we do, and this is the part that people have to be mindful of, is our engagement strategy. Who do we engage? We work with those 40 organizations, and I swear if I count them again, it's over 50 now, right? We work with them, not as a dotted line that they report in, right? We just work with them on a need to work basis, right? But we also work with the victims of the crime, the mothers who have lost children, right? The agony, the pain, the trauma, the loss that they go through. But we also work with the people that are involved in it, the people that have done the crime, done the time, and want to make a difference, right? So when we sit down at the table with people from Zero Gun Violence Movement, half of them will have criminal records. But I'd rather listen to them than listen to John Tory, our mayor, speak about what's going on the streets. Right?
Well, there's a disengagement between City Hall and what really happens on the street. We all know that.
So when we come into a space, yeah, you're not going to frisk us, right? But I'm going to have population there that know the game better than you, right? You know, because we have people that are working with us that have 1 foot in, 1 foot out. They're trying to get out, but they can't get out, right? You know, and it's just a matter of time before they do so. So that our engagement thing is important for us because it gives us a better picture as to the reality of why the violence, why the guns, and why the fight that takes place in these communities. So we can understand why it takes place. And if we can understand it, the politicians should know. But they're not doing anything to deal with it. You know what? Everybody talks about the root causes, right?
Yeah, and everybody's looking for what is the root causes. Keep in mind systemic racism, colonialism, and 400 years of this stuff.
But when they had that meeting last week, who did they bring to the table? The city mayors and the police chief. Did they bring you to the table?
I've been around a long time.
Did they invite you?
No, they did
Did they
not.
invite me? No. So how are they going to understand what's going on if it's the people that created the fucking mess are the only ones at the table? Right? So we should have our own meeting. And we're not going to invite them. Right? Or maybe we should invite them. Yeah, we're still, well, anyway. But anyway, they don't have a good understanding.
But guys like us have been doing this for a long time. My father did it in his neighborhood. 32 crack houses here. He pushed them out of the neighborhood with just a stick. This was in the 90s when it was really a shooting up neighborhood. But he did it because he had the support of the neighborhood. And they saw that. When my father came, and I put it in my book, he come up to a guy, you're here tomorrow with your crack and your gun, I'm going to hit you with the stick. And he hit him with the stick. And your guys would say, well, they would shoot your father. Well, no, they wouldn't. The whole community was there. If you're from this community, we know who you are. You're from this community too. So why don't you give us a break and leave the kids alone?
No.
Stop poisoning them.
Let's look at it this way. The first word in community safety is community.
Exactly.
It's not police and it's not politicians. I don't know how they got in there, right? Just like what your father did, right? You know? And I'm sure some of the work you did was about community safety.
Inclusiveness, bringing the community
and protecting,
together.
and stuff. Look, the first word in community safety is community. Let's invest money in community, right? Community development, employment opportunities, education, right? Mental health. Let's invest money there. But no, all of them are throwing money at the police, and the police are saying, guess what? Oh, guess what? I got a problem. I can't arrest myself out of this problem, right? We need to invest in community.
They spent $15 million 5 years ago or so in corrections to analyze the gang situation that has now impacted itself in the Canadian federal prison system. And after a $15 million expenditure in 1 year of analysis, they came to the conclusion that they don't know what to do. And I'm sure they didn't ask. They didn't ask me. And I spent 50 years in that system.
Money is being spent, right? So what we're saying is that the communities are not underserved. they're poorly served. Because people are getting money. People are paying their mortgages, people are paying their bills, people are getting money. But they're not doing the work that needs to be done to reach that population, right, that needs to be reached.
They're missing the point, and the point saves them money. So open your eyes, right?
Right. So, yeah. So we have a problem. And the way I'm positioning gun violence these days is look at gun violence as a report card. A report card. You know when you went to school and you got a report card and you had 8 subjects and it tell you if you passed or whatever? Look at gun violence as a report card that tells you what you did good or bad yesterday. So on this report card, as gun violence increases, guess what? A lot of these subjects, you got failures. So whether it's policing, right, whether it's education, you got an F. You're not done your job. So you don't do your job here, you don't think there's going to be
repercussions, right, for sure.
So everybody's looking at gun violence as the problem. I'm saying, don't look at it as the problem. It's a report card and telling you what you fucked up yesterday, right? And if we can continue to do the same things and expect a different result, I think they call it insanity or something.
That's exactly the meaning for insanity.
You see? Yeah. So this is going on. But at the same time, because we work with a population, right, that are victims of this crime, of this gun violence, we have to work double as hard. And we have to focus not on the root causes. I'm going to tell you something new now. Forget about the root causes of gun violence. Talk about the seeds. Before the roots come, the seeds. Who are planting these seeds that turn into roots that bear this violent reaction?
A lot of argument in that.
So we have to go deeper than the roots, because sometimes you say the roots is too late, right? The same things that we did 20 years ago, 30 years, 40 years, we're still doing it. Oppression, racism, lack of job opportunity, lack of education. Like you can walk into 2 different schools in 2 different parts of the city, and from the time you open the door, you can smell success or failure. Right? If I walk into a school in Rosedale, it's all bright, everything's shiny, everything's in order, right? You know, the students are walking in line, everything's in order. But I walk into a school, I'm not supposed to call it other neighborhoods, but if I walk into another school somewhere else, first of all, you can't even walk through the door, you have to buzz in. And then when you buzz in, where the fuck do I go? Like, why is everything so dark? Why is there so much noise going on? Why is there so much confusion? Right? Right? So the students that learn in this school and the students that learn in the other school, you don't think there's going to be different outcomes?
They're all public funded schools you're talking about.
Of course they are.
Exactly.
But the ones in the rich neighborhood, they get public funding, but they also get private funding, because the people's kids that are going in there are big time money earners. So when they don't have bake sales, you got to be joking, right? You know, here's a check. Take a check here for $2,000. You go into the other school, they have a bake sale, right? You know, and they're trying to get their 50-cent profit on the muffin.
We'd be selling Kool-Aid.
You see what I mean? So it's all right in front of us. So where's the political leadership and the political will to change it? So you asked me initially, what has changed, right? Not much has changed, right? All we're seeing is more gun violence, more funerals, more agony, grief, trauma. We're seeing all of this. That has changed, but not in a positive way, in a negative way. Because the same people that created this fucking mess are still calling the shots. So that's why it has to come back.
Those are the seeds you're talking about.
Of course it is, right? Right? So that's why the work that you're doing in terms of trying to engage this population, work in the community, whether it's at Alexander Park or doing this program, right, you know, are important. But we need to multiply the work that you're doing, right? But is there any politicians that would recognize the success of what you're doing and make it easy for you to have more success? No, right? They're going to fund who they want to fund, when they want to fund, with how much they want to fund. So we've got to find other strategies.
Or wake up those politicians to the needs so that they respond to that. Whereas the empathy in them as a group, is that's what you're talking about.
Of course, but the thing is, the politicians, they always have this four-year window, five-year window. So we got stuck with John Tory, right, you know, for another 2.5 years, right, you know? We get stuck with Doug Ford. So it's not that we can go in there and fire him. We have to wait until this election takes place, right? So we have to get our young people interested in becoming politicians. So those decisions that are made at those tables, they're present, right? But the young people are so disengaged right now. They said, why would I want to do that? Why would I want to be a community leader? Look what they do to community leaders, right? They go after them, right?
They always have.
So you think that's going to change?
Yeah.
You think that's going to change?
Yeah, change is possible, and I always believe that. So is it going to change overnight? No. I was around in the civil rights movement of the mid-'60s, and I'm around now. And just like you said, not much has changed. The struggle's the same. The points of the struggle are all the same.
Yes.
And it should have changed over this 50-year
You would think
period.
so.
Now,
You would
it
think
hasn't.
so. Like, this is Toronto 2020. This is not Toronto 1920.
Exactly.
We have the resources and means.
Or we'll say 1965.
Yeah.
The big,
So we have, look, give credit where credit is due. I got to keep saying that. Toronto is a world-class city. We're internationally acclaimed. Anybody from around the world, you ask them if they want to go to Toronto or New York, they're going to say Toronto, right? You know? Well, most of them will, right? You know, Toronto, we have that stature. We have the resources, the means, right? You know, to get ahead of this. But we're not applying those resources properly, right? Why am I getting a phone call from Mexico to find out what's going on in Toronto when it comes to gun violence? I says, you're from Mexico and you want to find out what's going on in Toronto? What's your angle? Oh, you know, like we've seen this spike in gun violence in your city, and we want to know if it's Mexican immigrants that are coming from Trump land to Canada, to Toronto, and causing this problem. I says, hell no. We got a made in Toronto problem. That has nothing to do with Mexican immigrants, right? You know? But that's the attention that we're getting because we're not addressing this problem right. I want to walk down the streets and feel safe. I want to come into Alexander Park and I might have taken a wrong turn. And then you say to me, oh, you're lost in neighborhood, right? And you come out to come and save me.
I come looking for you.
Because you think something's going to happen to me, right? No, I want to be able to walk here and get lost and go around until I find where I want to go to. But in certain communities, you can't do that. We have a mother that has 3 sons. And she says, Louie, I wouldn't even send them out at night to take the garbage out because I fear something could happen to them. This is Toronto. This is Toronto, this resourceful, rich city where some people are afraid to come out, right?
But that fear aids criminality because if they were willing to come out, it literally takes away the impetus of criminals to do something in certain areas because too many eyes are on them. Look, people have retreated into their houses.
Of course, and that's dangerous. And you mean to say that you see it, I see it, but the politicians that make the decisions have not. They're okay with it as long as the violence doesn't spill into their neighborhoods, right? So we're not going to go into their neighborhoods and pop up some guns. We're not going to do that to get their attention. But the community needs to step up.
With surgical precision, Louie, I'm listening to you now for 1 hour. So with surgical precision, you've outlined all the angst. I grew up in this community. My father was in this community. He was a community leader. Come from a lot of activists in this community. We know where the problems lie. We know the genesis of the problems. We know the seeds also. And you've outlined all that. You also outlined the solution to the problem, what the government can do in fortifying the areas that they need to fortify to save $1 to $6. And that's what you're talking about. And you've done all this, and you're still doing it. You're a soldier in our neighborhood. You're a name that's starting to be reverberated around, just like Dudley Law, someone who puts his life on the line to help other people here. Say something to these politicians because they're going to watch this, man. And I'm here advocating for you because I believe in you. I invited you on this show because I believe in your message also. So you have an opportunity to look in that camera and say to them what really needs to be said. Wake them up, Louie. Wake them up, man.
Look, I'm going to go back to what I said. The first word in community safety is community. Let's get the community involved in the solutions. When you have a meeting and you only invite mayors and police chiefs to deal with an issue that is in crisis mode, you got a problem, right? And we have a problem. But this is going to continue to grow from problem to crisis to epidemic, right? If we don't address this. We all want to be safe in Toronto. We all want to avail ourselves of the greatness of the opportunity of living in this city, right? We do not want this to grow any further because it's going to cost us all. And many more innocents will feel threatened if we don't address this problem.
And that hurts.
today.
If that bottom line is, it hurts your financial bottom line.
Of course, as a city, you have to. Like, we looked at some numbers the other day. The city operating budget over the last 6 years has increased 20%. It went from 11-something billion to 13-something billion. It's a 20% increase. And when we look at the line, when it talks about community investment and development, guess what? It went down.
Exactly. Yeah.
If that's not a clear indication of where your interests lie, right, you got a problem.
Detroit still hasn't recovered from the 1968 riot.
Yeah.
The same thing happened
You
there.
see?
Yeah.
Right? So we want the city to be safe. We want it to be fair, not for some, but for all. We have the resources, we have the means. Let's show some political courage and will. And let's just do it and work with community.
The key word is political courage. It takes balls to make changes, especially if you're pushing against political entities that have been around a long time.
And that's why the young people, it's not the politicians have to wake up, right? The young people have to wake up and realize that the amount of damage that they're causing in their communities, to their friends, to their families.
And they're being played.
Yes.
They don't understand that. They're being played by the seeds that you're talking about.
So we have to work with them closely, right? If we think it's important to talk about sex education at grade 3, you better be talking about financial literacy and community safety at grade 3.
That's right.
Because they're as important, right?
Well, I say that all, you miss the city. The city missed me. And I've cost them lots of millions of dollars in damage because they didn't get me by grade 4. They'd have had to get me because after grade 4 it was too late.
So this is where we need to. So we need to flip the switch. That's what we need to do.
Exactly.
We need to flip the switch, but we have to become the drivers and not the passengers in this response, because based on their history, right? I don't see any change taking place. The change must come from community. It must come from the community. From the youth them, but we have to engage them early, such as what you're doing right now at the community centers, not only here, but we need to go
right across the city, exactly.
Of course, but the thing is, if we're waiting for them to do it, we're going to be waiting for a long time, and I don't have any more time. Like my days are numbered. I've been around for some time, right? I'd like to see some progress. I'd like you to come and bring me back a year from now, and I says,
and have a more uplifting story about certain communities that have met success.
I'd like to do that and say, we're making progress, right? But when I look at the kids' eyes, they've given up on life and they haven't even lived yet. When I look at their eyes, they've given up on life, and a young kid, 15 years old, said he fears living more than he fears dying. So what the fuck are you talking about? You're not even living, you're still in diapers.
Because they're in prison. In prison, that's a mentality. You live with, you might die any day, so you live with that every day.
But I said, fuck you, don't know anything about living. You're still young, right? You don't have any experience in it. He said, fuck you, right? You don't know what I have to go through every day to live.
Not only that, it's kids playing suicide, dancing on razor blades. That's a way out also.
So there's an amount of violence that's taking place in our city that is unacceptable. But it's not only gun violence. It's young people coming in suicide. It's young people taking high-risk activity, knowing that they could die from it, but they don't fear it.
That's right.
So this is where we need to go. I want you to call me back in a year's time and we do this again and have something positive to say. Because you have to give credit where credit is due, right?
Let's see what politicians wake up. Let's see what politicians put their money where their mouth is. Let's see what politicians listen to guys like you, guys like me, who talk this talk all the time. We will see in 1 year for sure, because this.
Well, we have to keep doing it, but we can't get discouraged because a youth worker says to me, like, Louie, I'm doing all this work, but I don't know if it's making a difference. I'm saying if you weren't doing this work, it would be worse, right? So we have to continue pushing. We have to continue building allies because there are political people that want to help, and there are police people that want to help, right? Right? But I don't want to get a phone call from Mexico again and saying, "Wow, you're even getting worse. You better have that discussion with me," right? We can do better.
The worst would be, if it's coming, is I don't want to go to Toronto because of the violence. I can't rent an Airbnb because I might get shot in the one next door. That hurts the bottom line for everybody here and cuts back on all the money that's going to be directed towards groups.
So we need a new leadership. We need a new formula. But the key part of all of this is community. It has to be inserted, not as a passenger, but as a leader, as a real partner.
Keith Ford, the highest ranking black police officer in Canadian history, came into this neighborhood in 1967, 68 and to try to start a black youth program here. And it didn't work, and they didn't come back for lots of years. They're starting to come back now, and I know they're coming back into other communities doing the same thing. So there's to sum all this up, because we're talking about policing in these communities and gun violence. They weren't affected then, and that's 50 or something years ago. They weren't effective. Are they effective now, or at least marginally so?
We have to do a new type of training with the police officers, right? Because they hold the key also. It's like a jigsaw puzzle, and there's 20 pieces. The policing is one piece, but the policing piece by itself means diddly squats, right? If the other pieces are not on the table. Because there are young police officers that are coming out of, that want to make a difference, right, you know?
And they will give up some of their time to do that.
Yes.
Yeah.
But, so we have to train them different. It's not always about enforcing law. It's not always about intimidation, right? It's not always about over-policing and police violence. Remember, this is where we started. Police violence, that's where I got into this, right? And today, it still exists, but it's a different type of problem, right, you know? So we have to retrain the police.
Well, here in Canada, in my opinion, based on my observation, police don't discriminate when they shoot. They shoot white people, Native people, they shoot everybody seemingly in Canada. When the United States is more marginalized and more targeted depending on the type of areas you're in. So the thing is that there are police here that come into this neighborhood who try to help. And I'm wondering, because you travel different neighborhoods more than I do you see the same thing in other neighborhoods? Has it started yet in other neighborhoods? Because it has started here. There are cops that come.
They're trying. So I'm going to give you another neighborhood. Right? So the police came into a meeting with some young people. They were community police officers, right? They came in, guess what? No uniform. They came in cut off jeans.
That's what I'm talking about. They do that here. Yeah.
And they sat down in the meeting. So when the meeting started, the youth said, no uniform, no gun, I'm going to come at you. So they were aggressive against them at the beginning, right? But over the length of the meeting, there was a communication, a respectful communication taking place. And progress was made.
So
progress was made.
That's the community you're talking about.
However, 2 weeks later, in the same community, a 13-year-old is not complying with his bail condition. That means he's not supposed to associate with this other person in the school. 13-year-old. In the same community, a call goes out, 8 police cruisers show up with a K-9 division to come and capture a 13-year-old that broke his bail conditions. I'm saying to myself, even the police that were there said, this is overkill, right?
It sends a message.
But all the good work that had been done previously gets thrown out the window.
That's right. If you think I'm bad, then I'll be bad.
But not only that, all the kids in the neighborhood are talking about this, right? All of them have some video of all these police cruisers coming in and stuff, right? Right. So all the good work that has been done in terms of that meeting where they came in and stuff.
It went out the window. So I'll go back to Keith Ford. Keith Ford came in here, tried to do something here, and 2 months after he come in here, 90% of all my friends were in jail on minor beefs. I, on the other hand, did major beefs, so it's a different thing. So what they did is we looked at it, he was a wolf in sheep's clothing. That's how we looked at it. We didn't trust him.
Right.
Therefore, he was ineffective. Had that not happened, had that sweep not happened and those guys not go to jail, he might have been more effective. So we looked at him as just a tool for the man, you know?
So we need political courage. We need a new type of policing, where policing is part of the community, right? It comes from the community. And I'm not sure if the police department is ready for that type of policing.
I don't think they have a choice. I think they have to revert back to that or face the political unrest that they had in the late 60s and the revolution. I think it's inevitable.
It is inevitable. Like in 2019, the more money we gave to the police, the more the violence went up. So someone's got to say something's wrong here.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right? It's clear. It's right in front of your eyes. Take a look at it.
Well, they gave $25 million 2 or 3 years ago.
Look, the police have so much money, they don't even know what to do with it. I swear that, look, the next time they have a funding thing, and they're going to give all these millions of dollars, call all the youth, right, and say, I'm going to cut you a check for $2,000. skip the police, skip the community organizations, go direct from the funder to the youth them and say, here's a check for $2,000. You go spend it smartly in terms of job, employment, whatever it is, and programming and stuff. And you come back 2 months later and you tell me something good that you did with that 2,000, I'll give you another 2,000.
Yeah, there's going to be an attrition rate attached to that too on the people that have failed and took the 2,000 and bought a gun in order to maximize their investment and make more money quicker. There are going to be that too. I think
no, it's not going to be perfect, right? But I'm going to say, look, I trust the youth them on the street more than I trust you, right? You go and do something positive with your life, right? Go to set up another program, do something, and
you're
you
a finance
come back
guy.
and you tell me what you can do, and I'll give you another $2,000.
You're a finance guy. How about a loan institution in these neighborhoods based on that principle?
Economic development, community development. You go into, say, Chester Lee. Is there any business there? There's no, the ones that were there, they all closed down and ran away, right? You go there, as soon as the sun settles, everybody, that's not right enough.
Okay, Louie, yeah, we've been talking. Hey, listen, I could talk to you all day because we're from the same cloth. We believe in the same thing, and we're putting our asses on the line out here on the front line for these kids. We know where the money should go. We know why it's not coming. At least we presume to know why it's not coming without sitting at their political meetings in City Hall. We just hope for things to happen better than they're happening now. But in the meantime, we do what we do and we make it happen anyways.
No, we're not hoping for nothing. We're going to make it happen. We can do better. We must do better, and we will do better. We have to lead by example because these kids want to live a good life.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Until you're about to bruise them. What do you think they're going to do? So we have to become leaders.
That's right.
We have to lead by example.
The leaders of the community have to step up.
Yes.
Exactly.
Engage them, and the politicians, if they're smart, would engage. Us. Yes.
Exactly.
Right.
United we stand, brother.
Divided we fall. Thank for the opportunity.
Yeah.
Like we can do better. We
well,
must
it's
do
all.
better.
This is, and I'm from the days we say all power to the people, and truly it is that. That's the community. The community is the power of the people.
And the police and the politicians have to have confidence in the people in the community.
Yep.
Because they want to be able to walk their streets safe at night.
Yep.
They want to be able to go shopping. They want to be able to have a good job. They want their kids to go to school and get a good education.
Yep.
Nobody wants, look, in closing, a lot of these kids, okay, they're not angels, but they're not the devil either. So stop treating them like that.
That's right. And that's where the mental health issue comes in. A lot of changes in the community. All right, Louie, thanks for talking to us, man.
No problem.
Yep.
Thanks for having me.
Hope you enjoyed the show with Louie March today. It was all about community. He precisely cut into what we really need to do to make this city a safer city. He knows what to do. He said what he had to do. All we have to do is listen, and our communities will be better. Thanks for watching our show. Stay tuned for our next show.